Greetings folks, and welcome back to the landscape. Now I do apologise for the background noise. As you can see, I'm in front of a body of water and I'm continuing to learn how to use one of these spot meter devices, which I can't find, which here it is, my Sekonic L408. Now in my last video I was predominantly metering for the shadows or the darker bits of the image, and that's because I deliberately chose subjects that demonstrated that characteristic. Today I've deliberately gone for the other end, and if I look at my idiot sheet, which I have here with me, it suggests if you're at a waterfall, you meter for the visible highlights and then overexpose by 3 to 3.5 stops. So I've just metered that waterfall and it's giving me at an aperture of f8 a shutter speed of 30 seconds. Is that right? 30 seconds? Really? 30th of a second. Sorry. F8, a 30th of a second. Phew, that was throwing my head in for a bit then. And according to my little guide that I got here, so what am I doing? I am overexposing by 3 to 3.5. Well, let's overexpose by 3. So to overexpose from the 30th, it'd be a 60th, 1/25th, 1/250th of a second would be to overexpose that scene. And that's all because what the light meter does is whatever I pointed at, it will meter it and give me a reading for middle grey. So if I was to shoot that image at a 30th of a second, the water would come out grey, which isn't very nice. You overexpose in order for the water to appear more white, more translucent, and that's why it makes that suggestion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the digital camera, dial those settings in, and then we'll have a look at the result on the back of the digital camera and determine whether my idiot sheet, my cheat sheet, is actually idiot proof or not. So let's move to the back of the camera. Okie dokie, so there's the camera. Let me just manipulate the exposure a little bit so I can do some framing up. Oh no, in fact, let's do it properly. So what were we? We were 30th of a second at f8. Oh no, according to the analog display, it's actually f9. So where's 30? Oh no, wrong way. Yeah, let's get rid of all that gump. There we go. Oh, hang on. That's not going to help me with my composition, is it? So let's get a composition that we're happy with. Something like that, I reckon. It's okay. Are we level? Yes, we are. Focus, focus, focus. And focus about a third into our scene. There we go. Yeah, that'll do, right? The exercise isn't about composition, it's about exposure. Right, so what were we? We were f9 at a 30th of a second. Ooh, wrong one. Right, and as you can see, clearly that is underexposed. So what did the guide say? Overexposed by 3 stops. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Quarter of a second. Is that what the idiot guide said? I can't remember. Now, meter for visible highlights, then overexposed by 3 stops. And we started at 30th. Read this way to overexpose. Oh, I read it the wrong way around. That's why I came out with a funny number. So 1/30th of a second, overexposed by 1 stop would be 1/15th, 2 stops 1/8, 3 stops 1/4 of a second. And as you can see, the LCD has brightened up straight away. So let's take that image and replay it. See what we get. So the highlights are blown out. We knew that would be the case. Blown out quite badly, actually. I know there's latitude in this camera, but I'm not sure there's as much latitude in a piece of film. So let's back it off by 1 stop, which would give me 1/8 of a second. See what we get now. It's a better result, but now I'd say it's a shade too dark. So, okay, this is all about learning. So let's go back to, where do we start? 30th of a second. So let's add, so the idiot guide says to add 3 to 3.5. So let's add 2.5. So 1, 2, 3, that's 1, 2 stops, 2 1/3, 2 2/3. Do 2 1/3. Yeah, better. Just compare them. That was our 2 stop result. Now we're 2 1/3. So let's do, no, it's the other way, isn't it? Let's do 2 2/3. Interestingly, the camera, look, is telling me it thinks I'm overexposed by, oh you idiot. I want to take another picture. Right, so I can scrub that one. Right, 1/5. Yeah, okay. In this particular example, right, we're going to get highlights. Nothing we can do about that. But I would say when we started with a 1/4 of a second, which was 3 stops, that's too much. I think those highlights are getting out of control. Then we went to 2 stops. I think that's too dark. For digital, it's fine, but for film, I think I'd be pushing it. Then we went for 2 1/3, 2 2/3, and then back to the beginning. Yeah. So I think, based on that result, the idiot sheet needs to be amended to overexpose by 2 2/3 of a stop, based on what I'm seeing. So what I'm going to do is, there's another little falls down here. Oh, I don't think the Osmo, there it is down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition myself, and I'm going to do exactly the same exercise, but using that water down there as opposed to that one over there. So let's go and get set up and see what's what. Okay, so I've repositioned, and where's my spot meter? There's my spot meter. There it is right there. Right, so let's take a spot meter reading, and I think the bit that I'm going to meter is that area right there. So this is where wearing glasses is a pain in the bum. Right, so okay, in terms of f-stop, it's quite a deep scene. So I think I'm going to go for f16. So for f16, it's giving me an 1/8 of a second. So I'm just going to show you on the display. Although it says f11 there, there's an analog display down the bottom. And the analog display is actually hovering on f16, not f11. So I actually tend to trust that one more than I trust that one. So 1/8 of a second is our starting point. So let's now move to the back of the camera. Right, here we go. So I think we're going to change to 3x2. I think the scene suits a 3x2. Come out a bit. Now what I've done is I've actually dialed in what the light meter suggested, just so we've got that as a starting point. We'll come up with a composition, something like that. Oh, we already were level. Yeah, I think that's okay. Focus. Looks good. Right, okay. Right, I know the angle's a bit odd, but it's not the point, is it? Right, so our cheat sheet said to overexpose by 3 to 3.5. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to overexpose by 2 2/3. So, overexpose, and our starting point was an 1/8. So if we're going to overexpose, 2 stops would be half a second. Half a second. And 2 2/3 would be an 1/8 of a second. That doesn't look good, does it? Haha. Oh my word. So what does look good? We start at an 1/8. An 1/8 is too dark. 1/4 of a second. Just 1 stop. It's alright, I suppose. But 2, I think 2's pushing it. 2 2/3, definitely pushing it. Let's go back to our starting point. It's 1/8. I think 1 stop is probably enough. I don't quite know what's fooling it. Especially as the section that I metered was, where is it? Here, which is predominantly very, very pale. I wonder if this is where a 1% light meter would help me, rather than the 5% one that I've got now. I think what's happening is it's metering these bright highlights plus the sort of the dark colours all around, and not just that portion. And then the other thing I thought about was maybe meter for this portion down here at the base of the falls, or maybe this section up here. Let me do that now whilst we're chuntering, just to see whether it gives us a different result. So let's have a look. So if we do that one first, that little bit of water. That's exactly the same result. So now this time I'll meter down here. What f-stop were we? F11. Now that's interesting. So down here, the light meter is giving me a 1/15 of a second as a starting point at f11. So if we do a 1/15 of a second as a starting point, which is obviously quite dark. So now if I go 1 stop, 2 stop, 2 2/3. I know there's a lot of glare on it. What do we get now? Oh, it's taken a long time to write that one to the card. Yeah, that's not bad actually. That's not bad at all. There's a lot of glare on it, but that's because there's not a polarizer, which is a whole new ball game. But I think 2 stops would have been enough. So what was that? 1/15 of a second, wasn't it? So if we add a stop, 1, 2, 3, that's 1/4 of a second. No, hang on a minute. 1/15, sorry. 1/15 of a second. 2, 3, 1/8, yeah. 1/4 of a second is 2 stops. So what 2 stops gives me? Wait for it to write to the card. Yeah, glare aside, I think the 2 stops is actually better. Wow, what a learning game this is. So just for the hell of it, I have actually put a polarizer on, and I metered for the original spot that I metered for. And now I need to increase the exposure by 3 2/3, not 2 2/3, which is what I had on the original fold. So I'm not quite sure what I learned here. I think the key thing that I've learned is that when I'm out just using this camera, I probably need to be using this. And I need to keep doing that until I get to a point where I'm confident that I can hit the right result every time. Or I have to find some other mechanism that enables me to take a reading, come up with a result, and then use something else, I don't know, a phone app or something, that gives me a guide, I guess, as to how close I am. Or the other way of doing it is, in a situation like that falls, overexposed by 2 2/3, but then maybe do an underexpose. So do 2 frames, do 1 2/3, 2 2/3. Because the likelihood is the scene's going to be underexposed rather than overexposed if I stick to that rationale, which is very similar, and I think I said this in the previous video. When I was playing with pinhole cameras, I had a manual dial where you dialed in the f-stop, which I think was something like 128, the lighting conditions, and that gave you, on the film speed, and that gave you a suggested shutter speed, which obviously on a pinhole camera with a tiny little hole to let the light through, exposures were 30 seconds, 60 seconds was common. In order to make sure that I hedged my bets, I always used to underexpose by a stop, do the reading that the dial predicted, and then overexpose. Perhaps I need to adapt a similar rationale when I'm using the film camera. I probably need to get back to my accommodation and write all this down on another idiot guide. So it's definitely an exercise worth doing, because I do want to get a reasonable result. I know I'm going to learn, I know I'm going to make mistakes, but at £1, whatever it is, a frame, I don't want to make too many expensive mistakes. And I think this is where this exercise, using the light meter and using the digital camera to try and find out whether I'm close or not, that will actually, in the long run, it will save me a lot of money. Also a lot of frustration. I think I could see myself becoming maybe a bit despondent and frustrated with film photography if I just kept making mistakes all the time. And of course, it is an expensive way to go about photography. So, going to leave this one here. I hope it's been interesting. I kind of feel it's been a bit haphazard, but certainly been an interesting learn for me. If you're into landscape photography and you like my content, please consider becoming a subscriber. You click the little bell button alongside the subscribe button, you'll get a notification for when I upload new content. And if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, because it does help the content and it does help the channel. Right, I'm gonna move on, see if I can find something else to play with my light meter. And until I do, I shall bid you farewell. Take care, stay safe everybody, look after each other. Bye for now.